From phys.org, farmers fear that dingoes are eating their livestock, but predator scat tells otherwise. From prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. You can catch a new episode throughout the day at Creature Guide Live on Rumble and YouTube. And don't miss our documentary commentary on Saturday at 6 p.m. Central on Rumble. Now let's get into the animal news of the day. So let's take a deeper dive into what's going on here in, I'm assuming, Australia. So let's see. We've got a map of what's going on. This just seems to be a diagram of what the different predators are eating. And unfortunately, we've got feral foxes and cats in this instance. Very little of the, at least it seems, of the dingo. Killing carnivores to protect livestock, wildlife, and people is an emotive and controversial issue that can cause community conflict. Difficult decisions about managing predators must be supported by strong scientific evidence. In Australia, predators such as dingoes and foxes are often shot or poisoned with baits to prevent them from killing sheep and cattle. Feral cats and foxes are also killed to protect native wildlife. But research elsewhere suggests public perceptions of how predators affect ecosystems and livestock are not always accurate. Feral cats and foxes are having a really negative impact in areas where there's not much protection for the different marsupials. Even of the larger species, the young are very much at risk of these different animals. There are also giant cats now appearing in different parts of Australia, where you have some on average reaching more than 30 pounds. These giant feral cats are just consuming all the marsupials and native bird species too. Our recent studies sought to shed light on these controversies. We examined the scat, or poo, left behind by dingoes, foxes, and cats. We focused on the Mallee region of Victoria and South Australia, where there are calls to resume dingo calling to stop them killing livestock. The problem is in different areas of Victoria, which is the most southeastern state of mainland Australia, it has areas where the dingo populations are very low and they do not have a lot of genetic variety in these different regions. So that's not good for killing off the native animal in the region. I mean, I am completely for the extermination of the feral cats, foxes, dogs in different regions. Who else? Oh, well, definitely the mice, rats. There's plenty. Not all the rats. There's a few species of native rat in the region. But I'm just talking about, especially the brown rat, certain Eurasian rat, that is having a big negative impact. Let's see. Our study took place in the Big Desert Weiperfeld Nekarakat Reserve Complex in the semi-arid Mallee region of Victoria and South Australia. Okay, I'm familiar with this reserve. So, in this area, you do have a very small population of dingoes. So, the park is somewhere around a little more than 1,000 square miles, and there may be 20 dingoes within the region. That's horrible. Within this region, I believe you also do have eastern greys a little further to the west, and it's pretty much the limit to the eastern grey kangaroo range within eastern Australia. They only inhabit different parts of Queensland, not Victoria. Well, yes, Victoria, but and New South Wales. So west of that, you have the red kangaroo. And also in this region, you might have instances of the certain bandicoots, like the bared bandicoot species, which is a species of parallenomorphia of marsupials, around 20 different species of this distinct order of marsupial, mostly feeding on different species of insects. Oh, here, let me show you. Here he is. So this is the little bandicoot. They're quite small. I don't believe they reach much more than 1.5 pounds, and they just feed on a variety of different species of termites, sometimes going after other insects. So this is quite a distant relative of kangaroos. Oh yeah, this is another bared bandicoot. There are other species of bandicoot, And they're quite distantly related to animals such as koalas, wombats, or kangaroos. Um, Especially when it comes to kangaroos, they're not part of the family of Macropodidae. Let's see. So other animals that are here are also the eastern quoll. So this is one of the carnivorous marsupials within the region. There are also 6 distinct species of quoll throughout Australia. So some you will find different areas of central and northern Australia with the western quoll. So the eastern quoll is quite small. They don't usually reach much more than 2 pounds. It's a pretty large individual. Mostly focusing on going after different species of grubs, a variety of different types of arthropods, and probably scavenging off of marsupial carcasses. But unless there happens to be a baby that ended up getting abandoned, it's a very small marsupial. Well, not necessarily a small marsupial, just of like referring to technically an underdeveloped individual. It will take advantage. But here's another picture of the quoll. This might be, though, a separate species and not necessarily the eastern quoll, but that distinct pigment that we saw with the other quoll species, the other quoll individual, is not very commonly seen. Um, this could possibly be a western quoll. They have their very distinct morphology. There's 2 out of 6 distinct species. Let's take a further look, and then we'll see more of the animals. So this continuous ecosystem comprises about 10,000 square kilometers of protected native mallee bushland. Okay, that's a lot larger than what I mentioned. I must be only thinking of the Karkat Conservation Park specifically. This must be referring to. I'm wondering if this is consisting of a variety of different protected areas within the region. Um, hmm. And is entirely surrounded by crop and livestock farming areas. Yeah, there are many situations where there can be an area of protected native habitat, and then beyond that, it's just farmland. Fox baiting is conducted along the boundaries of Victorian managed reserve areas. Dingo baiting occurs in the South Australian managed section of the park. That's unfortunate. Not for the fox, but dingoes. Since March 2024, the small dingo population has been protected in Victorian managed areas due to their critically low numbers in the region. It's also something to note when it comes to the dingo. So it's still a bit of a debate, but dingoes, so it is part of the Canidae family, so the same family which wolves come from. But there were certain debates, still are, on whether or not this specific canid is just a subspecies of wolf, but there also seems to be enough morphological differences that this would be its own species, Canis dingo. Um, it's very likely that the ancestor of the dingo came from not necessarily the New Guinea singing dog, which looks very closely, very much alike to the dingo, but the New Guinea Highland dog. So that was possibly the ancestor, and they arrived in Australia around 3,500 years ago. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so we also have the eastern greys in this region. Here's a better picture. He's like, yes, I'm not. I don't say this very often, but I'm concerned about the dingoes too. Okay, so this animal doesn't, I don't believe, necessarily lives in this specific area, but it does live just northwest of the region. This is the numbat. So this is part of the Eucephalomorphae lineage of marsupials. So this is an insectivore. They also don't reach much more than 34 ounces. They're quite small. Despite it looking like a squirrel to an extent and a bit of a chipmunk, it's actually very distantly related and is not a placental. Squirrels, humans, elephants are placentals. And this animal also has a very long tongue compared to its body size. So that wasn't just some made up picture. Numbats do have extraordinarily long tongues. I don't know the approximate length though. However, apparently they have about 50 different, almost like premature teeth in their mouth for some reason. Usually, when you see animals that have extremely long tongues, whether it's an anteater, a pangolin, tamandua, um, maybe possibly the armadillos, they don't tend to have teeth. But for some reason, this animal sort of does. Technically, I mean, it does have teeth, just not as developed. Also, they're apparently the numbats are also quite rare. There might only be 1,000 in the wild, and there are a few populations over in southwestern Australia, and this distinct population in southeast Australia. I believe it's like northwestern Victoria. Prior to the change, Victorian farmers and authorized trappers could control dingoes on private land and within public land up to 3 kilometers from farms. Farmers say they have lost livestock since dingoes were protected. What are predators eating the Mallee region? Can you mess with this at all? Okay. Well, something's going on with the kangaroos and wallabies consisting of 60% of somebody's diet, and then the birds are consisting around 15%. So, okay. This must be the dingoes. This is the fox, and this is the cat. Volume of prey categories, I'm guessing in this specific region. Oh, okay, here we go. So, dingoes, at least what's been observed. Kangaroo and wallabies, 60%. Birds, 15%. Emus, that's actually quite interesting, around 11%. House mice, around 6%. I guess this is based off of the scats that they're finding. There could have been hundreds of scats. Rabbits and hares, around 5% of their diet. Huh, that's kind of small. Oh, yeah, rabbits and hares are having quite a negative impact on the Australian ecosystems. Overgrazing in the many grasslands, especially in the Northern Territory. And other prey species, I guess this might be where the livestock falls in. Wow, though. Okay, let's look at the foxes. So he seems to be just munching on, for the most part. I mean, forgot about the mice, but outside of like what 16%, the rest of his diet is just native wildlife. The foxes, however, echidnas 2%. They're probably going after the young, but it's quite unfortunate. House mice 16%. Interesting. 14% kangaroos and wallabies. That's not good. 13% invertebrates. Considering they're native invertebrates for the most part, that's not good. No. I mean, there are certain invasive invertebrates over in Australia. 12% reptiles. 11% rabbits and hares. So 9%. Well, considering technically so are the dingoes, but foxes are omnivores. They're probably munching on certain species of fruit people might be growing. Might be munching on certain wild fruit as well. Small native mammals, 9%, 8%, the birds, and then large mammals around 7%. Okay, something doesn't make sense here then. Now, we don't know. Well, let's take a look at the hare, not the hare, the cat. So the cat's munching 6% of its diet are invertebrates, 8% are rabbits and hares, 12% are small native mammals, guessing something like the mice and rats. And then I'm going to guess it's saying like 15% on the birds, and 53% are house mice. Wonder what it would be on something like a feral dog, but that's interesting. Oh. And then 5% are other prey categories. Now, the problem is that, well, the dingoes and cats at the moment seem to have eaten just as much. At least that's a rough estimate. So we don't know how many of these livestock were taken. I mean, that's why it's hard to, even with this chart, I mean, or these different diagrams, because we don't know how many cows, sheep, chickens were taken, quail. Yeah, it's what, five? Oh, did it even say how many samples? Oh, okay. 136 samples from the dingoes, 200 samples from the foxes, and just 25 samples from the cats. So the foxes had the most, but the cats barely got any samples from the cats, technically. But that is interesting. So it looks like at the moment, at least, the livestock isn't really a big part of it. They are feeding on them, but the question is, did they start trapping because one or two animals were taken? Now, I mean, that can have a dramatic impact on somebody, but I don't know what to make of this. So let's keep moving. Livestock was not a major part of the diet of dingoes, fox, or cats. Some 7% of fox cats contained sheep or cattle remains. This was more than that of dingoes at 2% of scats. No feral cat scats contain livestock remains. I do find that interesting. I would think that the feral cats would be at least scavenging, because cats are quite carnivorous. The dingo diet was dominated by kangaroos, wallabies, and emus, which comprised more than 70% of their diet volume. Cats and foxes consumed more than 15 times the volume of small native mammals compared with dingoes, including threatened species such as fat-tailed dunarts. Our data must be interpreted with caution. Scat analysis cannot differentiate between livestock killed by predators and those that are scavenged. It also can't tell us about animals that a predator killed but did not eat. In 2022 to 2023, when we collected the scats, rainfall in the area was high and prey was abundant. Oh, that's good to hear. So while we found livestock were not likely to be a substantial part of these predators' diets at the time of our research, this can change depending on environmental conditions. For example, fire and extended drought may force predators to move further to find food and water. They may move from conservation areas to private land where they could prey on livestock. Well, I think this is just really hard to say because we don't know how many domestic livestock were killed. And it also, because of how large of an area this region is, I wonder if it's including more dingo population. So, like, which pack is also having um, this specific impact? I mean, there are many different types of packs when it comes to wolves that are consistently monitored, or even different lion prides. I'm trying to think of another social predator. Hmm. Oh, orcas. To understand this further, we used motion sensing wildlife cameras to assess which prey were available in the ecosystem. We compared it to the frequency they occurred in predators' diets. This allowed us to determine if dingoes, foxes, or cats target specific prey. I'm just being very judgeful about this, judgmental about this, because excuse me, there are many instances, especially with wolves, where they will claim, especially the media will claim, that they're not having any impact on livestock. And definitely in states such as Colorado, Washington, Oregon, I'd say most states that wolves occur, outside of areas with plentiful elk or mule deer abundance, some cases moose, they tend to prey on the cattle herds within the region. Now, the thing is that since the prey seems quite abundant within this protected area, or at least in the outskirts, the dingoes don't seem to be having much of an effect on the livestock, or at least preying on them very much. Same thing even goes for the most part with the foxes and cats. Red foxes and feral cats are common in the Big Desert Weigefeld Nagarkat Park. We found foxes and cats both consume small mammals proportionally more than we expected. Given the prey's availability in the study area, cats consumed birds at a higher rate than expected, and dingoes consumed echidnas more than expected. Further intensive monitoring work is needed to determine how these dietary preferences affect the populations of prey species. The Let's see. Our results suggest foxes may cause more harm to sheep than dingoes overall, a finding consistent with research elsewhere in Victoria. So it sounds like there have been other studies done in other vast areas of Victoria where the foxes are also attacking the sheep. Dingoes were the only predator species that regularly preyed on kangaroos and wallabies. They're, these species are abundant in the region. They also compete with livestock for grazing pastures. So, yes, this can be quite common. You have to remember there are millions. We're not even talking about red kangaroos, eastern grey kangaroos. There are millions of them throughout eastern Australia. So it's not surprising that they'll compete with livestock for grazing. But especially if it's rotational grazing, it will actually have a beneficial impact on the landscape. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else? Fewer dingoes mean more feral goats and kangaroos. That's the animal I tend to forget about over in Australia are the feral goats. So they can be a problem when over browsing on different species of shrub or bush, which can have a negative impact not so much on the true kangaroos, like the eastern greys, but mainly the different species of wallabies, or if they occur on certain areas of Tasmania, then that's going to have a negative effect on the quokkas, as well as like a couple of other islands where the quokkas inhabit. Let's see. So, I think that's it. Well, if this is true, it's nice to know that the dingoes are not, at least they don't seem to be the major components of the livestock killing. And it seems to be more the foxes that are the issue. And I think in some cases the cats, but it's wasn't as specific with the cats when it came to like the other prey. So let me know what your favorite let me know what your favorite species of marsupial is, especially when it comes to different species of macropods, so animals like the wallaby or kangaroo, or even animals like the numbat in the comments. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. You can catch new episodes throughout the day at Creature Guy Live on Rumble and YouTube. And don't miss our documentary commentary on Saturday at 6 p.m. Central on Rumble, because nothing is better than all animals all the time.